Okay, yeah. So for 35 years, my whole focus in the business has been in the private sector. So my job is to plan, to provide disaster planning for critical infrastructure like the hospitals, private airports, ports, certain logistics areas that can't go down. These guys cannot go down. So they're not going to count on FEMA. They're going to have a private contractor like our company go in and make sure that all their risk assessments handled, not just insurance, but the pre-planning side of it. So bringing the fuel, the power, the security forces, the additional medics, the emergency response vendors. Everybody's moving into, especially when it's hurricanes pre the event, writing the event to make sure that that facility's power doesn't go down or the system doesn't come apart. And if it does, there's shrink wrap crews in the fourth floor, keeping the water off the deck, keeping the water from actually stopping the life-saving surgeries. For example, one of the hospitals did 17 life-saving surgeries as a result of the roof coming off, but over 300 of our men were in there shrink wrapping underneath it, diverting waters, pulling water off the panels. Additional security teams were put in place because, as you know, when the grid goes down, lawlessness comes out from everywhere. Well, all the indicators are across the board. If you see what the FBI has talked about as far as Christopher Wray talking about the cyber attacks, the threats to our security, all these type of things are just kind of a pregame. They're prepping the water, right? They're preparing what's going to happen. So when they keep talking about the fact that our water and our infrastructure, electrical grid has the ability to get hit, like General Flynn says, if I can think it, they've already thought it, right? It's simple. The power grid we have in the United States is very fragile. If you look at just the disaster zones that we go into, when there's a major hurricane, the coastline has maybe 30, 40 miles. The hurricane is maybe 60, 65, 75 miles long. And then it runs back maybe 100 miles in. But really, the first probably 40, 50 miles is where you're going to have most of the damage along that path. But it takes a good portion of the United States electrical line workers to pull and source all these transformers, all this line into an area that typically takes, in some cases, up to 3 months to get that grid back up. So if you hit the United States power grid in multiple areas, you're looking at about a year's worth of work and not enough equipment here to get that stuff in place. So, to me, it's like this. If China were to hit these areas, Iran or Russia, or just be blamed for it, the whole system's going to collapse. Yeah, I mean, look, I've worked the border, as you know, for the last going on 4 years with this new administration change. There was no need for our services at the border. We did a six-part docu-series with Turning Point called Border Battles, and we also took Kennedy to the border on his documentary called Midnight at the Border. But if you see the amount of military trained men that they've documented, and if you simply look at what happened at the border, it was beautifully orchestrated. So these military men they're in camps right now. And it's just a matter of them getting the signal. And if you do, you hit this infrastructure, and people that have been ignoring it, it's going to be a dark time in America. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm there, the guy that's at the front line, seeing these things actually happen and unfold. I mean, it's extremely well orchestrated. I mean, it's a simple way to start a civil war, because in America, we don't identify by color. Well, some do, or the type of person. We're all colors here in America. So once those attacks start happening, people are going to retreat and go indoors. Now everyone's on lockdown. They're going to control the roads. You're not going to be able to move in and around that area. So there's going to be a lot of shock and awe. 35 years in the planning side of it, and never before have I ever had these conversations with some of the critical infrastructure that we're working for. So these are actually being put into plans of how they're going to respond. Yeah, they're absolutely gearing up for it. And we've had conversations for the last 2 years around this, and actually what we call hardening the structures so that they can survive an attack. But they themselves are scrambling because they're really behind the 8 ball on this one. Yeah, you're not going to. There's not enough resources. I mean, recently we were in D.C. On the planning security team for Rescue the Republic, and as we were going to grab lunch, we were taking some pictures of the Commerce Building, and it's interesting because two undercover patrols guys followed us to the restaurant, stood back, then followed us when we left, and then approached us with two of my firefighters that are part of the planning committee. And it was interesting. They're like, "Why are you taking pictures of the building?" And one of the guys goes, "Well, because this is America." And he's like, "Well, no, you have to understand something. There's just a huge security risk right now across the country." And I'm like, "Well, I'm grateful that you guys are doing your job," but I'm thinking to myself, when it all goes down, there's never that you don't have the bandwidth. That's why whenever there's a wide area disaster, I mean, just Northridge earthquake back in '94, the fire department was tapped out in 7 seconds. They couldn't take another phone call. Law enforcement is going to be completely overwhelmed. I mean, here's the thing. The reality is with 1,000 of my guys, I can bring LA County to its knees with 1,000 of my guys. There's over 200,000 that they have registered already in the United States that are highly trained that can do what my guys do. You know, listen, America's not going to go put someone's house fire out if our house is on fire, right? So it allows China to make the move on Taiwan. You know, Russia's doing what it's doing. You know, it's going to be a global movement, and it's going to be extremely disruptive.